Romain Grosjean's narrow escape at the 2020 Bahrain Grand Prix was harrowing, but it pales compared to some of F1's other crashes. To be a race car driver in the early days of Formula 1 was often considered signing a death warrant. One of these deadly crashes has changed Formula 1 forever and saved so many lives over the past seasons. In this video, we'll take a look at the crash that changed F1 forever, and we'll look into Formula 1's deadliest crashes in history. The 1980 German Grand Prix. Not all fatal accidents occurred during race day. Pre-season testing can also be equally dangerous. This is what happened to Alfa Romeo driver Patrick Depailler in the 1980 German Grand Prix, which resulted in his death. Depailler's car overturned during a test session at the Hockenheimring circuit in Baden-Württemberg, causing serious head injuries. The Hockenheim circuit was modified following this fatal accident to allow drivers to control their vehicles at high speeds. The 1967 Monaco Grand Prix. Lorenzo Bandini was driving in second place behind Denny Hulme in the 1967 Monaco Grand Prix when he lost control of the vehicle and crashed into the guardrails and straw bales. The car caught fire due to a fuel tank rupture, and Bandini was covered in flames. In the aftermath of the crash, Bandini was diagnosed with a third-degree burn, which is the most serious and dangerous kind of burn. He died in Monte Carlo 3 days later. Following Bandini's death, Formula 1 officials banned straw bales from all competitions. The 2010 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. The 2010 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix would prove to be Michael Schumacher's final race. The Mercedes driver was on his first lap, and he had returned to Abu Dhabi after a 3-year-long break from competition to reclaim his former glory. After V. Antonio Liuzzi collided with his car, Schumacher was extremely fortunate to survive the race with his head intact. Liuzzi's car came dangerously close to Schumacher's cockpit as the German racing driver was saved from a fatal accident. Both cars were severely damaged, but the drivers were unharmed. Both seemed more concerned about not finishing the race afterward. Schumacher said, "I am totally fine and was not hit by anything in the incident. It's a shame, obviously, as I would have liked to finish the season with a more positive ending." Liuzzi added, "I am sorry that we did not score any points today to get back to 6th in the championship." The 1961 Italian Grand Prix. The 1961 Italian Grand Prix was held at Monza and was the penultimate round of the Formula 1 season. Moments after the race began, a tragic accident on the approach to the Parabolica corner claimed the lives of Wolfgang von Trips, a leading Ferrari title contender, as well as 15 spectators. The unfortunate incident occurred when Jim Clark's and von Trips' cars collided. Clark's car came to a halt after skidding for a few meters, so the impact was less severe. However, as he lost control, Von Trips' car slammed into the circuit's perimeter fencing, crashing into the helpless spectators, and Von Trips died instantly as he made contact with the ground. The 1978 Italian Grand Prix. Ronnie Peterson had a string of bad luck during the 1978 Italian Grand Prix. He had to start with an old model after his first car, a Lotus 79, was damaged during a practice session. In addition, the race had some technical issues, and Peterson had a poor start. And as he tried to get back to the track, Peterson's car collided with the barriers and caught fire. Doctors found 27 fractures in his leg, which was gravely wounded. However, Peterson's injuries were more serious than simple fractures. He had a fat embolism and kidney failure, according to his doctor. Sadly, on September 11th, he ended up dead. The 2014 Japan Grand Prix. The 2014 Japan Grand Prix spectators witnessed one of the most tragic moments in Formula 1 history. Due to heavy rain, the Suzuka track had become slippery, causing Adrian Suti to lose control of his vehicle and come to a halt in the runoff zone. A crane arrived to help Suti, and while they were trying to help Suti, Jules Bianchi's car lost control and collided head-on with the crane. Bianchi suffered serious injuries as a result of the collision and ultimately died in July 2015 at the age of 25, after months of struggling with his injuries. The 1982 Belgian Grand Prix. Gilles Villeneuve, a Canadian driver, was one of the most flamboyant drivers on the Formula 1 circuit in 1982 and a sure bet for the championship. Unfortunately, he died in a crash during the Belgian Grand Prix's final qualifying session. Villeneuve was attempting to improve his position on his final qualifying lap with 8 minutes remaining when he crashed. Jochen Mass moved to the right on his cool-down lap to allow Villeneuve to pass. Unfortunately, Villeneuve, who was speeding up, didn't notice Mass's intention in time and moved in front of him to overtake him. Villeneuve's Ferrari was launched into the air before crashing into the ground and disintegrating as a result of the collision. Villeneuve was catapulted from the wreckage, sustaining fatal injuries. The 1976 German Grand Prix. One of the scariest incidents ever occurred at the naughty Nürburgring circuit, also known as the Green Hell. The race authorities were concerned about safety because of the overcast conditions, even though they were opposed to canceling the race. Niki Lauda called for a boycott of the race, but it was not passed owing to a single vote. The race's horrors were highlighted by a lack of safety materials and facilities. Lauda's Ferrari swerved off the track and collided with a barrier before catching fire on the second lap. Lauda was trapped inside the burning car and suffered severe burns throughout his body. The contaminated air damaged his lungs and impurities infiltrated his bloodstream. The fire burned off a large portion of the racer's face. Following the medical assistance, Lauda fell into a coma, and the driving world assumed he would be lost forever. The hospital, too, gave him his last rites and awaited his departure. Lauda miraculously survived the incident and went on to win multiple championships after his return. The 1994 San Marino Grand Prix. Roland Ratzenberger and Ayrton Senna lost their lives in an interval of just 24 hours during the 1994 San Marino Grand Prix weekend, making it one of the most tragic in Formula One history. Even before these fatal crashes, Jordan's Rubens Barrichello was involved in a collision during Friday's practice when his car slammed into the tire wall at the Variante Bassa section. He was fortunate enough to survive the incident. However, SimTech driver Roland Ratzenberger didn't have such fortune and died the next day in qualifying after a damaged front wing caused him to lose downforce at the end of the terrifying Tamburello sweeper and crashed into a concrete wall. Despite being airlifted to a hospital quickly, he was declared dead upon arrival. This was the first death at a Grand Prix since Riccardo Paletti in 1982. The bad luck continued at Imola on race day when triple world champion Ayrton Senna's car veered off track in the middle of the same Tamburello bend and collided with the outside retaining wall. The legendary Formula One driver died after sustaining skull fractures, multiple brain injuries, and a ruptured temporal artery after a tie rod pierced his helmet. Senna seemed to be reconsidering his decision to compete in the race after the death of Ratzenberger, but he eventually decided to go ahead with it, which would eventually cost him his life. Following that tragic weekend, Formula One implemented a slew of new safety features for the rest of the season and in the years that followed. Due to multiple safety reforms, the number of fatal crashes in Formula One has decreased significantly over the years. Even Grosjean's fiery crash in Bahrain, which saw his car split in two, allowed the Frenchman to walk away under his own power. So it's safe to say that the important safety measures in Formula One that saved Grosjean's life came as a result of the fatal crashes that changed Formula One for good. Well, that's the end of today's video. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button and comment below. Also, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell if you are new to this channel to be notified when we upload more content.